while a trickster yokai like the kitsune will either end you or play a joke, depending on its mood. In the case of the true predator yokai, humans only have one use, and that's food. That's the group we'll be looking at in this video. Like the more famous Yuki-Onna, the Nure-Onna is exclusively female, and they prey exclusively on men, or rather, a certain type of man. They appear as a gigantic snake with the upper body and arms of a lovely human woman, similar to a lamia. As a predator, the Nure-Onna usually does her hunting from the water, which she uses to hide her snake part. She only shows her upper body as she combs her long hair, not unlike a Western mermaid, or rather more like how an anglerfish uses its lure. When the right sort of man happens by, he can't resist the temptation to molest a helpless woman simply trying to have a bath. Or so he thinks, until she whips out the snake part. She traps him in her coils and proceeds to drain all the blood out of him, leaving only an empty husk. A girl's got to eat, of course, even if one might not condone her methods. But then it does occur to me that maybe the Nure-Onna's thinning of that particular segment of the herd isn't such a bad thing. Similar to another creature known as the Nukekubi. The difference is the Nukekubi's neck stretches to ridiculous lengths, while the head searches for a snack. The Nukekubi's head, by contrast, completely detaches from its body and flies off in search of food, usually humans. Like the Nukekubi, when its neck isn't stretched, the Nukekubi will appear to be completely human when its head and body are together. In some versions of the legend, the Nukekubi actually were human once, and their condition was believed to be caused by a curse, but by whom and for what seems to be lost in the mists of time. It was also believed that the Nukekubi could only detach its head for a limited time, after which it must reunite with its body or die. In one account, a wandering Buddhist monk took shelter with a peasant family during his travels. When he was given a place to sleep, he began his nightly devotions. Some conversation from the main room drew his attention, and he peeked through a crack in the wall and was astonished to see the family sitting around the fire with their heads floating above their bodies. "Will that monk never go to sleep so we could eat him?" one asked. Naturally, the monk began reciting sutras and did not stop. Finally, as he hoped, all the Nukekubi's heads flew out a window searching for easier prey. The monk then carefully sealed all the windows and stood guard outside the door. When the Nukekubi returned, they all attacked him, but he beat them off with his staff. Unable to reach their abandoned bodies, one by one the Nukekubi fell lifeless to the ground. So, if you suspect a Nukekubi is after you, your best bet might be to stall it. If you don't have a staff, a nice baseball bat would likely make a good substitute. Her name roughly translates as hairy courtesan, and she is, by all accounts, very hairy. Opinions do differ as to whether she has hair all over her body or just her head. Either way, her hair grows unnaturally thick and long. She is rumored to be extremely hideous or perhaps has no face at all. Only no one knows because her hair always covers her face and anything else the Kajoro does not want her victims to see. Also, apparently no human who has seen her face has lived to tell the tale. This yokai frequents red light districts, which are her preferred hunting grounds, for reasons that will become clear soon enough. From the back, she appears to be a normal courtesan of the district out for a stroll in the moonlight. If a young, virile man approaches her, either thinking he knows her or thinking he would like to, she strikes. When she turns around, both her face and body are hidden in hair, which either shocks or stuns the man long enough for her hair to envelop him. She then uses her hair as blades to slice him into manageable bits before devouring him. In this regard, the Kajoro is not unlike the Nure-Onna, who stabs and slices her victims with her barbed hair. Similar technique, possibly similar origin. Which could simply be an irrational fear of the feminine. Some psychologists should look into that if they haven't already. While the name translates as enlightenment, one can only think it was meant a tad ironically. A dangerously strong yokai with an ape-like appearance, Satori were believed to inhabit the lonely mountains of central Japan. They had an appetite for human flesh whenever they could get it. Lonely travelers, ascetic yamabushi and their mountain huts, no one was safe. It was especially fond of young women, which it would kidnap and drag off to be ravished against their will, and likely devoured afterwards. As I hinted before, not exactly the sort of behavior one would expect from an enlightened being. Satori, despite the name, are anything but enlightened. They do have one peculiar trait which sets them apart from other yokai. They can read minds. They're especially good at it. Not only can they tell you what you're thinking, they can tell you what you're thinking faster than you can even get the words out. Naturally, this makes fooling and escaping a Satori almost impossible. As for hunting it, you can forget that. They know what you're up to almost before you do. No, there are only two known ways of escaping a Satori. You might want to take notes in case you're ever in this situation. The first method, clear your mind. Easy to say, but extremely difficult for anyone who has not had years of meditation practice. But if you can manage it, the Satori will get bored and wander off, and then you can escape once the coast is clear. The second method, act without thinking. One would assume we humans would be very good at that, considering how often we take all sorts of self-defeating or downright dangerous actions without thinking them out first, often preceded by the phrase, "hold my beer." Needless to say, it's trickier to pull off under pressure than one might assume. But if you can manage it, acting without thinking is something the Satori simply cannot wrap its head around. Sing a song, do a dance, whatever. But if the brain isn't involved first, the Satori will likely flee the area, muttering something along the lines of, "Humans can act without thinking first. Who does that?" We do, of course. Gets us into no end of trouble. So it's only fair that, in this one instance, it can get us out. Usually found on the western coast of Japan before a storm, the Isanade is a shark-like creature with a long tail covered in iron hooks. It is believed to slip through the water so quietly that even its tail above the surface does not make a splash. It uses that stealth and that tail to snatch victims from boats or the shore, pull them into the water, and eat them. Its name literally means shore stroker. Some people claim that the whole legend started just because some fishermen got a glimpse of an ordinary thresher shark and let their imaginations run wild. Other people claim that some people have no sense of mystery and wonder in their souls and are just being difficult. One of these statements is likely to be truer than the other. A close equivalent to the Western ogre, and possibly more vicious. Today we'll talk about the most famous Oni of all, Shuten-doji. Believed to be the son of an 8-headed dragon, he was of gigantic stature even by Oni standards. Worse, his great size and strength attracted lesser Oni into his service, almost like a feudal lord among monsters. Aside from his murderous nature, he was noted for his insatiable love of sake, and was sometimes called Drunken Demon, or Little Drunkard, yet he never passed out no matter how much he drank. There came a time in the old capital of Kyoto when young women and girls were going missing with no explanation. The great onmyoji, Abe no Seimei, was consulted. He divined that the culprit was none other than Shuten-doji and his gang, whose lair was on Mount Oe just northwest of the city. The Emperor Ichijō ordered the hero Minamoto no Yorimitsu to deal with the threat. Yorimitsu took his 4 most powerful retainers and set out to end Shuten-doji's reign of terror. Knowing that armed men wouldn't be allowed to get anywhere near the demon's lair, they disguised themselves as mountain priests, called Yamabushi, and hid their swords under their robes. At this point, the stories differ a bit. In some versions, Yorimitsu and his men met a group of old men who were gods in disguise. These kami gave Yorimitsu a barrel of magical sake, which had the power to put Shuten-doji to sleep. In other versions, it was a barrel of poison sake. Regardless, so prepared, the heroes infiltrated the demon's lair and discovered that the Oni had kidnapped the young women in order to drink their blood and eat them. Shuten-doji was easily induced to drink the special sake, which either put him to sleep or weakened him. In the ensuing battle, Yorimitsu and his warriors were able to defeat the lesser Oni and cut off Shuten-doji's head. And so all the young women, or at least the ones who had not yet been eaten, were rescued and returned home, and Shuten-doji finally paid for his crimes.